You're watching Sunday. Besides its religious significance, Easter also means boom times for chocolate makers. Millions of eggs, bunnies and chocolate bilbies will be sold. But this year, World Vision has launched a major campaign to highlight child exploitation and trafficking in the chocolate industry. It estimates that in the West African nation of Ivory Coast alone, more than 600,000 children work in cocoa fields, often in appalling conditions.
Chocolate's an indulgence. There's plenty of profit in it. We eat so much of it. Why is child labour and trafficked children part of me paying a lower price for my block of chocolate? That's wrong. I think most Australians would be shocked. For me, I don't want blood on my tooth when I eat chocolate. I don't want to be part of that. Most Australians don't. That's why we need to say to the industry, what are you doing? You can clean this up. This is where it all starts, it's the supply chain.
Tim Costello, deep inside the jungles of West Africa's Ivory Coast, in search of proof Australian chocolate is a product of forced child labour and slavery. Disturbingly, the evidence is easy to find.
It is hard. The work is hard.
The work is so hard.
Yes.
And you've been doing it for 3 years already, haven't you? Yeah.
Ivory Coast and Ghana produce more than half the world's supply of cocoa, the raw ingredient of chocolate grown on thousands of small plantations. And millions of dollars worth is imported into Australia by our big manufacturers, including Cadbury, Nestle and Mars, each year to satisfy our appetite. And this is the human cost. Young children born without the most basic freedom. The freedom of choice.
In the village I went to, both in Ghana and in Cote d'Ivoire, I asked 200, 300 kids assembled there, who goes to school? Not one hand went up. Who wants to go to school? Every hand went up. Who wants to be a cocoa farmer? Not one hand went up, because this is terrible work. Long, hazardous, work that locks you out of what a childhood is and what an education is. It's terrible.
Are some of them tortured?
Some of these children certainly are beaten. If they want to express a different view and run away, they're caught and they're kept there. In some families, children are just expected to work. In lots of these families, trafficked children are brought in because they're the cheapest labour.
But we are concerned when we hear stories that children might be working in dangerous conditions to produce the cocoa.
Tim's come here to West Africa to offer comfort and a promise of help.
That your farms, your children are safe, that you are being paid a fair price.
And he's determined to awaken the conscience of Australian chocolate eaters.
Every Australian would feel the revulsion of that. It's almost like a psychic vomit to think that that's going on. The industry knows this.
In fact, chocolate manufacturers have known since 2001 the cocoa they import is passed through the hands of forced child labour and slaves. Back then, 9 Sunday program helped expose and document stories of torture and abuse. "7 years on, children are still being trafficked, working up to 18-hour days, unpaid, unable to leave, controlled by their farmers." Can you guarantee that no chocolate sold in Australia is tainted by child slavery?
I can guarantee that every Australian manufacturer is passionate about making the change on the ground, and that every manufacturer is involved in the programs that are delivering the change.
Trish Hyde heads the Australian Confectionery Manufacturers Association, the body that represents our biggest chocolate manufacturers. In 2001, manufacturers said they had a solution, promising by July 2005 they would no longer import cocoa from child labour and slaves. The deadline passed, little was accomplished, and little has changed. Wasn't it a false claim to the public by chocolate manufacturers that the problem of child slave labour was going to be resolved by July 2005?
Certification will be delivered by July 2008. And
this was 2005.
The reason there was a delay from 2005 was essentially a civil war took place in the Ivory Coast, causing a delay. Are we happy that there's a delay? No.
Why are we still importing coca that is tainted by these modern-day slaves?
There is no acceptable harm of a child. We completely abhor that as...
But you're still happy to take the coca?
It's reports that, from the agencies on the ground is that it's actually rare occurrences where there are trafficking.
Australian chocolate manufacturers know they're not telling you the full truth there. What we know is that trafficked children is a growing industry. It's a money-making industry. It's huge. The report that I saw said the estimate is some 12,000 children who are working in child labour. In the last 6 months, and that's all that the police have been acting on in Côte d'Ivoire, they have released 203 children who have been trafficked to cocoa farms. I saw their pictures. This is the tip of the iceberg.
To understand what's driving all this, you've got to know the world price of cocoa has been steadily falling for the past 20 years. But as the price farmers get for what they grow has gone down, the price we pay for chocolate has gone up. Now, this Snickers bar, for instance, now costs more than what a farmer gets for selling a kilogram of cocoa beans. So, with farmers getting less than ever before for what they earn, they simply cannot afford high-priced labour. So, they use their children or kids who have been trafficked as slaves.
Should we be trading lives to eat chocolate?
Any child harmed is not acceptable. There is no exception to that. That is exactly why the industry has taken the steps it has to ensure that children are living in conditions that are not harming them.
The Australian chocolate industry's response now, promising that by July the 1st it will be certifying production of cocoa as free of slave labour. But here's the catch. They're only going to be inspecting half the farms in West Africa.
But that's only on 50% of farms in West Africa. Is that good enough?
We're talking about scaling up. It's a starting point, and we know that there is more that we can do and want to do, but it is a starting point.
In other words, by their own admission, the chocolate manufacturers are saying 50% of what we eat in Australia still is tainted by child labour, by trafficked children.
We're buying cocoa from those regions because we need to make the changes there. To boycott a region will help none of the farmers. To actually work with the farmers across the board and to change the practices and to insist on those practices being changed is a positive way forward.
There's enough wealth, there's enough profit in chocolate to ensure that children aren't trafficked and children aren't working in hazardous labour conditions. I'm calling for a code of conduct with the chocolate companies. Well, the industry, like almost any industry, is driven by profits. Let's be honest, it's driven by profits. There are good people in the industry saying, yeah, this is a scandal, we've got to do something. And Australian consumers need to also be part of saying to the industry, sign up to a code, clean this up.
There's a very Western concept that price or money is the issue. When in fact, what we've found is that on the ground it's education and awareness. They're the issues that will help families break the poverty cycle. So yes, there is a big investment being already made by all of the manufacturers in funding the programs on the ground. But really what's making the difference in West Africa is education and awareness about what is right and wrong.
Yes, they've started to invest in it, but it is very small amounts of money. They could clean up the child labour supply chain much more quickly if they take this really seriously. We can beat child trafficking and child labour and say our chocolate isn't contributing to the worst exploitation of children. That's my plea to the industry.
Daniel Street with that powerful report, and confectionery manufacturers now say they will hold talks with Tim Costello on those issues. Watch what you buy this Easter. Our political interview is next. Laurie Oakes talks with Shadow Treasurer Malcolm Turnbull.